Hello and welcome to Pokemon Lair. Today we'll be unboxing a box of 10 Pokemon cards I sent to Professional Sports Authority or PSA over a year ago, and I just got them back. They sent them in this nice little box with some great packaging to keep them safe so they get to you without any damage. Let me get them unboxed and we'll see what we have. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Vaporeon, a Holo number 12 card. Looking at the front surface of this card, you can see there's no scratches or any damage, and this Holo looks really good in the video under the light. And looking at our centering from top to bottom, looks pretty good. Looking from our side to side, it looks a little to the left. And looking at our edges and corners, you can see there's a little damage to the right side. Looking at the back, you can see there's no damage to the surface. Moving on to our centering, the centering looks pretty good from top to bottom and left to right. And looking at our corners and edges, you can see there's a little damage on the upper right corner, and then on the left side there's the corresponding damage to the that was on the front right. And that's going to give us a grade of near mint 8. That's pretty good for an old card. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Wigglytuff, a number 32 card. Looking at the front surface of this card, I don't see any damage or creases or bends. Looking at the centering looks really good from top to bottom and right to left. And finally, looking at our corners and edges, I see no damage at all. This card looks pretty good. Continuing our inspection to the back, you can see that the surface of this card looks really clean, and our centering looks really good from top to bottom and right to left. And finally, looking at our corners and our edges, they look pretty clean to me. This one looks pretty good. And with what I found, what do we got? Our grade is Gem Mint 10. Awesome. That is a 21 plus year old card, and it's a Gem 10. Awesome. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Victreebel, a Holo, the number 14 card. Looking at the front surface of this card, you can see that it looks really good and nice. There's no issues with the holographic. It looks really good in this video. Looking at our centering, it looks pretty good from side to side, but I think it's slightly to the bottom. Looking at our corners and edges, they look really good on the front of this card. Moving on to the back, looking at the surface of this card, it looks pretty good. There is a little white speck on the blue border on the upper left. And looking at the centering, though, it looks really good on the centering. And looking at our corners and edges, there's a little damage on the upper right and the lower left corners. And that's going to give us a grade of near mint 8. Not too shabby. Our grading review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Dodrio, the number 34 card. Looking at the front surface of the card, there's no dirt, scratches, or bends. Looking at our centering from top to bottom and left to right, you can see that it is quite a bit off to the left. And finally, looking at our edges and our corners, I don't see any damage at them at all. And looking at the back, you can see that the surface looks really crisp and clean and nice. Looking at our centering, it is also to the left. And finally, looking at our corners and our edges, I don't see any damage on those that's noticeable. And that will produce us a grade of mint 9. Not too bad. Little wondered because of the one card. Not too bad. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Wigglytuff, a Holo, number 16 card. Looking at the front surface of the card, you can see that it looks really nice. The Holo looks really good in this video. The centering looks really good from top to bottom and side to side. And looking at our corners and edges, they look really good, except the whole left side has what they call silvering. And besides that, it looks pretty good. And flipping it over to the back, you can see that the surface looks really good. There's no creases or damage or dirt. Looking at our centering looks pretty good from top to bottom and left to right. And finally, looking at our edges and corners, I see that they look really pretty good. I don't see anything that's noticeable there. And that's going to give us a grade of mint 9. I bet you that's because of that silvering. Our grading review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Fearow, a number 36 card. Looking at the front surface of this card, I don't see any damage or dirt or bends. Looking at the centering though, from top to bottom looks good. From side left to right, it's quite a bit to the left. And looking at our corners and our edges, I don't see any damage there at all. Moving on to the back, the surface looks really good. I don't see any problems there. Looking at our centering from left to right and top to bottom, it looks pretty good. And finally looking at our corners and edges, I don't see any issues there that'll detract from the card. And with the off centering on the front, that's going to give us a grade of mint 9, which is not too bad. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Electrode, the number 18 card. Looking at the front surface of this card, I see no damage, no scratches, no bends. Looking at the centering of this card from top to bottom, looks pretty good, and from left to right, it looks a little off to the left. And looking at our corners and edges, I think they look pretty good. Looking at the back, you can see that the surface looks really good and clean. Looking at our centering from top to bottom and left to right, it looks like it's a little towards the top and towards the right. And looking at our edges and our corners, they look pretty good. I don't see anything that will detract from the card. And that's going to give us a final grade of mint 9. I like that for my Electrode. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Lickitung, the number 38 card. Looking at the front of this card, you can see that there's no damage, bends, or dirt. Looking at the centering looks pretty good from top to bottom and left to right. It might be slightly to the right. And looking at our corners and edges, they look pretty good. I don't see any damage there. Continuing to the back, you can see that the surface looks pretty good. Looking at our centering, the centering looks like it's towards the bottom and maybe a little towards the right. And finally, looking at our corners and edges, the upper right corner has a little damage, and there is some damage along the lower right edge of the card. And with that all being said, our grade is going to be a near mint 7. Not too bad. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Jolteon, the number 20 card. Looking at the front surface of this card, I don't see any scratches, bends, or damage. Looking at the centering from top to bottom, doesn't look too bad, but from the right to left, it is quite a bit towards the left. And looking at our corners and our edges, I don't see any damage that can affect the value. Flipping to the back, you can see that the surface looks really good. Looking at our centering though, from left to right and top to bottom, it is a little towards the right. And looking at our corners and our edges, you can see that there's damage to the upper right, and lower left corners, and there's some damage along the right side and the lower right edge. And with all that being said, our grade is an excellent 7. Not too good, not too bad. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Nidorina, the number 40 card. Looking at the front surface of this card, it looks really clean. I don't see any bends or scratches. Looking at the centering though, from top to bottom looks pretty good, but from the right to left, as you can see, it's quite a bit to the left. And finally, looking at our corners and edges, I don't see any issues with them. Let's take a look at the back, and as you can see, the surface looks really good. Looking at our centering on the back, it looks pretty good from top to bottom and left to right. And finally, looking at our corners and edges, they look pretty clear and clean themselves, so I don't see any issue there. And that gives us a grade of mint 9. Not too bad with that off centering on the front.